How's it going, YouTube? How's it going, Man United fans? Welcome back to My United podcast. I'm going to talk a little bit about Rangnick, obviously going into the international break. Now with 2-3 weeks to wait now till the next fixture, which I think is Burnley. So we've got a bit of time to wait now till United are playing again. And that day is we've got the FA Cup fourth round, obviously against Middlesbrough, but then we've got the next Premier League games not till the 8th of Feb. So quite a number of weeks to wait, and so that's interesting. Obviously got a bit to wait. So I took this opportunity. I thought we'd discuss how we've all thought Rangnick's kind of performed so far in his sort of 10 games that he's had now. Has it been 10 games? I've got some of the facts in front of me. 10 games he's had so far. So let's discuss them. Obviously, we've all been watching it, all been keeping up to date with what's been going on. Watched most of his press conferences leading up to games, after games, leading up to his first game. We were very impressed with him, weren't we, initially? How do we all feel about Rangnick now? Do we have that same sort of feeling? Do we feel like he's turned a bit of a corner? Did he start off on the right foot? There was a middle patch where he started off on the right foot, then he probably went a little south. Has he got that back on track? Has he improved it? Did we look better than we were with Ollie? So we'll chat about that. Just initially sort of talk about his performance, talk a little bit about the games in particular, where we've had good games, where we've had particularly bad games. Has the team generally improved? Has the style improved? Is there a style now? I think we all agree that under Ollie there wasn't much of a style, albeit I think when Ollie was at his peak in terms of getting United winning games, there was evidently a counter-attacking style. But as Rangnick improved us from a possession point of view, as he developed a style for a club like Man United to grasp hold of and to be proud of and to move us forward. So chat a little bit about that. But straight into the games, I suppose, which is where I kind of wanted to start. Rangnick's had 10 games now, 8 of which have been Premier League games. He had one FA Cup game and he's had one Champions League game fairly early on in his start at United. First game was Palace. That was the first real sort of test for Rangnick at Palace. We'll get the fixtures up actually, just so we've got some visual to go with. Let's just get that up. Seamless transition. Palace was his first game. I actually went to this game. At Old Trafford, and there was a lot of positivity around this game after it, or certain patches of it. There was a large proportion of the game where people genuinely felt that there was an improvement. I didn't get so carried away personally. Just gonna switch back to the standard a second, just so I can get the other bits up. Let's go back. Let's shoot back to that then. Yeah, so just adjust that a little bit. Doing some in-game tweaks here. Showing you all my secrets. So I genuinely didn't feel as if there was much positives out of the Crystal Palace game when we played Palace. Palace were poor, very poor. They've continued to be poor for the rest since we've played them and for the majority of the season. So that didn't show a lot. They haven't been very good under Vieira. Haven't been very good at all. And in that game, they allowed us to play. They didn't really press from the front. They allowed us to slowly, transition up into their half. And there was moments where the fans were all sort of saying, "Oh, it's much improved." There was 30 minutes in that first half where we were an improved side, and Sancho was good. Sancho was good in that game, I recall. Probably his best game in the United shirt, other than maybe the European game that he played before that. Really, it might have been the was it the Atalanta game? Yeah, can't recall, but yeah, he was good in the Palace game. Rangnick's first game, big test, Old Trafford, Palace, tricky side, beat them 1-0 with a, let's be honest, last gasp sort of Fred goal, really, out of nothing, which, of all people to score you a goal, you wouldn't have expected it to be Fred. But he got a goal. It was a good goal. My worry really from that game was that we lacked a creative edge. We didn't create enough chances, and that clearly was an issue. Rangnick's issue obviously was clean sheets. He wanted to make sure that we closed the door on that. As we see as we go through the fixtures, we leak a goal pretty much every other time. Did it against Young Boys, didn't against Norwich. We leaked a goal against Newcastle. We leaked one against Burnley. We leaked one against Wolves. And the theme continues. And to be fair, when you look at these games, in the Newcastle game we could have leaked more. Norwich weren't particularly bad. Burnley weren't particularly. I mean, we were okay against Burnley, but Wolves dominated the game. I was at the Wolves game. I went to Old Trafford to watch it against Wolves, and we were poor. And it could have been a lot more if it wouldn't have been for De Gea for most of these games. So yeah, okay. His focus was tightening it up at the back, making it more solid, more compact. But has that put a detriment on his offensive thinking, with how potent we are and how much resource we've got in that department? Has that in Rangnick's time, has that come to the front? Have we seen enough of his attacking tactical mindset as well as his defensive mindset? I'm not so sure. Obviously, for me, I think we've struggled to create chances under Rangnick. We've really struggled to do that, and that's the style I think we're all looking for. That how we develop and transition from defence into attack. How do we do it? Is it direct? Are we going to play a possessive game? Are we going to play, relatively? We're going to cross more. Are we going to try and play it through the middle? How are we going to play? And I think we've lacked a creative edge. When you look at these games, it's hard. There's not been a lot of, particularly a lot of goals in those games. There's been one or two. Obviously, the Burnley game, we managed to get 3. The game the other night, was it the Brentford game? Was a little against the run of the play, if you ask me, and I think Brentford deserved more out of that game. Villa was poor, really. I think the 2 goals that we got against Villa. I mean, I'm jumping a little bit here. I'll go into each game as it comes, but so it starts off at Palace. It was a sort of an up and down performance. Some positives to take from the initial first half of that game. Some negatives in terms of the creative edge, and it was a last gasp. 25-yarder from Fred that got us the win, or 20-yard if you're being a little picky. Going to Young Boys, where he fields ironically a young team made up of Robbie Savage's lad who came on in that game, but a very young team. Greenwood gets his goal, playing in the position that he should be playing in, or was playing in at the start of the season before Ronaldo came on board. Gets himself a goal. From that, really, defensively we were poor, but it was a makeshift United team and an opportunity to give some of the youngsters and some players that probably may never see Champions League football again a European cap. So that was just a bit of a exhibition match, to be fair, in that game. We move on to the Norwich game, where it was poor, really, again, and we relied on a last gasp soft penalty, really, which Ronaldo took away. Pretty disappointing not to thump Norwich, who at that time were at a bit of a low ebb. They've obviously turned a bit of a corner now, getting themselves out of the bottom 3. I think more from the fact that other teams around them are starting to perform pretty badly, i.e. Watford, who've dropped into that bottom 3, and they were there for the taking, considering recent results, and we struggled by and managed to scrape a 1-0 win and get the 3 points. But wasn't convincing, and again, lack of creative edge. We then move on to Newcastle away, where once again we struggle badly, really badly, and we make a very poor Newcastle team. Once again, we were at a fairly low sort of ebb and a pretty poor morale at the time. Make them look world class. Joe Linton picking up man at match awards. St. Maximin running as ragged. Just genuinely really, really poor performance. So up until this point from the Palace game, you're looking at this going, what on earth is going on here? Because I've seen a Palace game where we were fairly unconvincing to a young boys game, which is a mixed match of players, to an unconvincing Norwich performance. Okay, Rangnick's 2 games into his Premier League tenure, 3 games in, 2 real competitive games into his tenure, so it's pretty early stages. And then you've got the Newcastle game where it just seemed to go to pot. And we've seen some poor performances this season, which made me think in that Newcastle game that it was most definitely the players and their attitudes. 3 games into a tenure, COVID strikes a lot of teams. Rangnick had some initial issues with some players. Couldn't implement his training regime. Had a lot of games in between. Obviously, the Christmas period, the toughest period that you can pick up any Premier League team, not to mention Man United. And so, evidently, players were poor, poor performances from Rashford and McTominay and Fred and the list goes on. Ronaldo not on it, and not particularly good signs initially there. You move on to Burnley where something seems to click. We get a little bit of the performance was better. It looked like we were turning a corner. It was genuinely a better performance. It's a performance that you expect though. A bit of harmony back, and we look like we've. Rangnick's got 4 games under his belt, 5 games under his belt, including the European game. Is it now where he's going to start really cracking the whip? We then move on to the Wolves game, where it was then a flip reverse back to the situation we had at Norwich, back to the situation we had at Newcastle, where underperforming, not pressing, losing the ball in staffed areas. Defensively poor, just generally a really, really poor performance all round, and really, really poor to watch. I went to that game, really, really poor to watch. Neves run the show from beginning to end, assisted with Martinho, who was also class. And we were just poor from beginning to end. And then Traore came on and caused havoc down the right-hand side. And we just looked very, very weak and very, very poor. And once again, we didn't create many chances. Rashford was poor when he came on. Sancho wasn't particularly good for the majority of the game. It screamed out that we missed Pogba in that one, if I'm personally honest. Just overall poor. So you're looking at that at the moment going, Palace was not particularly convincing. The Norwich game was poor. Newcastle was poor. Burnley was a bit better. Wolves was diabolically poor. Really needed a performance in the FA Cup at Villa. We go there and we win 1-0. But Villa dominate patches of the game. Embarrassingly at Old Trafford. Once again, it was another similar performance that we had against Wolves, unconvincing. And Aston Villa could have snatched the game, if I'm honest. We then move on to the Saturday game against Villa, where we drew 2-2, where we should have won it. The 2 goals that Bruno got, though, were 2 goals out of nothing again. So you're looking at that going, well, once again, we haven't really created much over a period of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games, 7 or 8 games. We've scored probably 10 goals, 11 goals, maybe, and it's the 2 goals we got. It was a Bruno half chance where the keeper made a mistake, and then they gifted the second goal where they're giving the possession away in their own half. It wasn't like we cut through Villa outplayed them, outthought them, and scored a goal out of brilliance, which is what they did to us twice in that game. We were gifted a couple of those goals, if I'm being critical and brutally honest. And that's my concern at the minute with this Rangnick team, that this Man United Rangnick team, we lack a creative cutting edge on a consistent basis. Go to the Brentford game, that probably disproves my theory, but again, this equally proves the fact that we have got the creative talent in that team, and when it does click, it does come together, and we do make it happen. But once again, we were poor in terms of controlling the game, dictating the game. Brentford could have been 2 or 3 up in the first 10, 15, 20 minutes. We were poor without De Gea once again performing, which he has been doing all season. That game was almost dead and buried by half time. If Brentford take the chances, they got similar chances in the second half, and we get a couple of goals out of moments of brilliance. We take our chances, which we probably haven't done most of the season. But from a set pieces point of view, we're still poor. Free kicks were still poor. Creating chances were still on a consistent level pretty poor. And just overall, it's been unconvincing. We go to the West Ham game where we've got to have a bit of a fight. Okay, it's a team we're not expected to beat, and we fight, and we shut up shop at the back, and we create a chance, and we score a goal, and we win that 1-0. And that's a game which you're not expected to win 2 or 3, considering how well West Ham have performed. And that was probably the most convincing we've been this season so far. Well, at least in Rangnick's tenure, over those 10 games, the most his team has shown a little bit of bite and a little bit of, take a draw from that, you'd be a little bit disappointed at Old Trafford, but we've got the 1-0 win, we shut up shop at the back, and we got the 3 points. But I think overall, in terms of Ralph's performance or Ralph's style, we wanted this press, this high intensity, physical attitude. Has it worked? Has it been implemented? I think there was patches of it. There's been patches of it. I think it's not consistent enough. I don't think he's got the players, the personnel who believe in it, who implement it, who understand it maybe. Playing, starting with a 37 and a 35 or 36-year-old in games is not the answer for Man United. It's lovely in terms of seeing the names and being, this club that have got these big personalities, but we want to be a club who's winning. I mean, you see the likes of Alanga coming on is such a huge plus point and a positive step forward for the club and for the team, and he's been a breath of fresh air coming on, and it was brilliant. He's been brilliant in the last two or 3 games. It really has. I've enjoyed watching him, and that's what you want to see. You want to see players who want to play for the shirt, who've got the talent to play for the shirt, and who give it their all. And there's been a lot of players who haven't, and are happy to take a wage and complain about things at United on the training ground and in the media and in the team and the coach and the management. So much has come out this season about United's coaching staff, the poor quality of it when Ollie was here, the levels that were at, the standard that the club was at in terms of its coaching, the intensity of it, the dietitians, the psychologists, you name it, like every excuse under the sun, rather than looking at their own performances. And ultimately, that's needs to improve. And I think we'll go on to talk a little bit about Rangnick's man management style and his impact in the media, and whether there's been some positive and negatives there and how we feel on that one. But I think overall 10 games in, he's won 5, drawn 2, lost 1 in the Prem. He's won his FA Cup game, and he's drawn his Champions League game, and obviously he's got Atletico Madrid next, which is a big test in Feb. But in terms of his Premier League starts, 8 games, won 5, drawn 2, lost 1. The Wolves one was a poor result, poor performance as well as a result, poor performance. I think overall, Crystal Palace, Norwich, Burnley, Brentford, West Ham, Newcastle, Villa. The 7 games there. 6 of which are, must-win games, really. And the 2 you draw against Newcastle and Villa. Villa turned in a bit of a corner with Gerrard and a couple of decent signings, but the 2 games that you should be winning, 6 more points that could be on the board. And when you look at that in terms of the table, 6 more points. 6 more points puts you in the mix, doesn't it? Puts you in the mix. It puts you on 44 points, and you're suddenly 3 points behind. 3 points behind Chelsea. So it's it's 6 points is massive, isn't it? Villa, Newcastle. You win those 2 games, 6 points closer, and you're 3 points behind Chelsea with 2 games in hand. You're 4 points behind Liverpool, who are second. This is in our grasp. I know West Ham have got a game in hand. Tottenham have got a couple of games in hand. Arsenal have got a game in hand. But this is very much in our hands. And it was, I think the Christmas period was kind. The games are only going to get harder. Still got Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, Man City again to all play. So I'm not, particularly confident, and I think that period over the Christmas period was a vital one, and we should have been trying to maximise as many points as we possibly could. We've dropped across that period really in December and into January. We've dropped 9 points, 9 winnable points. Newcastle, Villa, Wolves. They're not really good enough, to be fair. But we move on. I think overall Rangnick's done well, considering the situation he's been in, with some players clearly not happy with situations that they were already in with Ollie. I think with the situation that it was coming to Christmas, there's a lot of games, short spaces of time, all that kind of stuff really. Obviously January's around the corner, there's a window. He had Pogba, was like one of his biggest players on it with a long-term injury. Ronaldo there was newly there, back, big character, making his voice quite heard quite loudly and making his presence felt. So a lot to deal with and a lot still to deal with. And I think these next 2 or 3 weeks for Rangnick is probably a blessing in disguise for him. He's not had that sort of break really, and I think he's an individual who won't waste his time. Sat there waiting for the players to return. He'll be making as much of it as he can. So, yeah, that's where we are with the games. And United sat in 4th place now with 22 games to play. Chelsea have really dropped off. They've got put some real pressure on themselves, really. But obviously West Ham, as I say, choking a little bit. Are they choking? Are they struggling now with the squad that they've got? Arsenal, Tottenham, you'd expect them to choke at some stage, but Tottenham have got games in hand, and 2 games in hand, win those two and they put themselves firmly in the top 4. So, interesting really. I think United have, it's weird seeing him in 4th place, because I don't think any United fan will turn around and say to you that it feels like we should be sat there and deserve to be there, but points don't lie. All I would say, I think it's a little bit of a false economy in terms of, the teams that we've beaten are teams we should be expecting to beat. I'd much rather have a up and down fixture list where we've got a Liverpool or a Chelsea or a Man City, then a Newcastle, then a Liverpool, then a Burnley, then a Chelsea, then a Burnley or a Brentford, or up and down fixtures, rather than having a series of really winnable, easy fixtures, and then essentially the top 5 or 6. But no game is obviously straightforward or easy. I mean, especially the way we've been performing this season, and that's why it's such a worry going to every game, sort of crossing your fingers at the minute, which is a bit of a concern. But overall, I think he's started off well, and I think, like I say, the 2-week period is going to come with open arms to Rangnick. So yeah. So I think all else I wanted to really sort of go on to discuss was kind of his man management. Really, I'll just get back because I haven't been looking at the. So yeah, I just wanted to discuss his sort of man management. I mean, for me, we've got like a bit of a stream issue. I know that's fine. Just get rid of this. Do some stuff behind the scenes. I mean, management style. I think we'd all kind of watched videos on YouTube, and I think there was most notably a video where he'd done a halftime team talk with the players at Leipzig, and he was speaking in German, and it was like that German accent is quite formidable, isn't it? And scary in certain ways, and authoritative, and I think there was a little bit of feeling that we were getting somebody who wasn't Ollie, was this soft kind of happy-go-lucky, wanting to be your mate type attitude. Somebody going to come in and just tell the players how it was, considering the performances we'd had, and I'm really sort of grabbing him by the scruff of the neck and hopefully like motivating him enough in that sense. A bit of tough love would kick them all on, and I think that's what we all wanted. I don't think it's necessarily worked out that way completely. I mean, he's been here a month now, is it? Across those 10 games. And I don't think it's particularly worked out. I don't think it's been negatives completely, but I think the negatives slightly outweigh the positives. Now, I think he's turning, as I say, I think that last game is probably turning a bit of a corner for him. I think there was a bit of a Fergie moment in that last 2 games. I think the situation with Ronaldo, they went on to win at Brentford and close that game out, and then the last gasp sort of minute goal from Rashford against West Ham to win it at Old Trafford was a bit Fergie-esque, and I think that kind of, it's what us as fans need. I think that's what Old Trafford needed. I've been there when it's been flat. It's not great, and when the fans all get behind you, and there's the vibe buzzes from the next game into from one game into the next, and fans get there with a bit of a better attitude, and then the manager sort of thrives off it. And I think Fergie was always on that role where it then solidifies you as a coach and a bit of a respectable character when you have those performances. I mean, sometimes those ones are on a knife edge, and I think, weirdly enough, I mean, you could say it was luck, but Fergie had more knife edge moments that went right than that went wrong, and that's just the way that he played, and I think that's why we were exciting to watch at times. But yeah, I think man management overall, he's stern, he's direct. I think in terms of initially where it's been pretty poor and pretty bad, for certain players, I'll mention certain names. So Martial, it's obviously not been great. It's in no particular order, because I think initially his issues were probably more Pogba, but I think the Martial issue was pretty poor. I think in terms of speaking about Martial's attitude or willingness to want to play, and then allowing that to pass across to the player who had the ability to then respond to that on social media, was pretty poorly managed. Not only was it poorly managed by Rangnick, I think initially speaking about it, which I don't think he needed to do, it was also pretty poorly dealt with by people around Martial. I think Fergie always timed his retirement perfectly, in terms of the fact that he knew not only was he ready and he was of the age and he was leaving on a high note, but no, there was a lot of clubs, and the financial game was changing in terms of money, and I think Fergie had passed through several eras where he felt it was time to move on, and I think equally what Fergie probably would have been struggling with is this new dynamic of footballer, the way that these young players get money very, very quickly, massive amounts of money quickly at an early age, that don't go through the same rigmaroles as that the probably younger players 20, 30 years ago went through, in terms of the
the hierarchical stuff that they have to do. You know, the mascotting, the ball boying, the cleaning the boots, you know, all the work they have to do behind the scenes. I think Fergie would have struggled with the social media aspect of it. I think that's the biggest thing now on players. And so I think he probably accepted that in himself when he retired. And I think Rangnick's probably of a similar ilk. He's a lot younger than Fergie. I think they've got a fairly similar attitude in terms of you know, how they would deal with players. They're both fairly stern characters. I think Rangnick's no different. I think he's a fairly stern and a direct sort of guy. But I think his inability to understand the media from a footballing point of view is a little bit poor, which we'll go into. I'll just talk a bit about his kind of a press management in a second, but so the Martial thing was poorly dealt with by Rangnick. Whether Martial ignores it or whether Martial comes out and speaks the truth or whatever he does, I think it was poorly managed by Rangnick. You know, a manager shouldn't be coming out and calling out his players regardless of what they've done in the media. That should be dealt with in house. For lots of reasons, you know, maybe you felt aggrieved by the fact that, you know, Martial turned it down, but calling somebody out in the public eye was never going to end particularly well for that scenario. And okay, he's been able to calm that situation down, but then it's just floating around like a bad smell. So it wasn't a good idea to do that. The Pogba situation, he came out quite early on and said if he wants to play for the club, you know, great. If he doesn't, then he needs to leave. And for me, he got on a bit on the. I mean, we all have a lot of views on Pogba, and Pogba's played this card several times this season where he's injured for large portions of the season. He's underperforms for his value and his reputation. And we're overall, I think, as United fans, we're pretty disappointed with Pogba. But I think whether that's just playing into fans' hands or trying to address a situation that's been ongoing for some time and trying to get some sort of conclusion on it was probably not the right time. Nor I don't think it was the main focus for Rangnick. Obviously, he was probably asked the question on it, but I think he could have just turned around and said, you know, we'll address it when he's back from his injury or back from the summer camp or wherever he went to sort it out. But I think ultimately that wasn't a great situation. Now Pogba's floating around, seemingly not playing. I mean, how long has it been now? We're nearly the end of January. Everyone was told that he was coming back in the new year, and here we are. So is that down to Rangnick's ability to convince him to play? I'm not sure. Van der Beek, I think the old Van der Beek situation for both Ollie and Rangnick has not been great, and obviously we'd all assumed that with his connections with Eric, you know, Ten Hag and stuff like that Van der Beek was up on his list of people that he regarded as highly regarded. And but it's clearly not the case. So I mean, the whole thing there has just been pretty poor. There's been situations where clearly we've been lacking a bite in midfield where McTominay's been suspended on one of the games. Fred's not been there through illness. There's been situations where Van der Beek could have played and he still hasn't played him. So that overall it's been very peculiar. Same with Lingard. You know, I thought Lingard would have been an option. Lingard got given an opportunity, and I think he made it really clear himself that in his body language that he wasn't particularly bothered about playing, which is pretty disappointing. But we're back to square one with him, really. But I don't think he's particularly dealt with that situation from the back of how good his loan spell was at West Ham, and there was a clean slate there to clearly work from, but it hasn't worked out. In terms of the good things though, so I mean that's obviously some good man management from Rangnick. It's not all been negative. I think the Elanga transition's been positive. It was extremely positive. You know, to see, I mean, hearing about Elanga, there's other youth players who were floating around behind the scenes. You know, Shara Thierry and players like that. And it's will those players come through Hannibal as well? I know it's been that in and out of loan spells and stuff, but will they be featured eventually later down the line? I'm not saying this season, but maybe next season. Obviously, Rangnick will still have a big say in what we're doing as a club, but Alanga's been a positive introduction this season, and I think it's something that we really needed to kick-start other players in the team. Sancho and Rashford and players like that. That look, I will bring in a youth player. I will start them, and if they play well, I'll play them again, and I'll give them a chance. And it's been great. I think that in itself has shown. Look, I'm taking no crap. These players want to play. Instead of complicating the situation with contracts and money and personalities and this, that, and the other, ultimately these kids want to play football and they'll take your place. And he's done that brilliantly with Elanga, and I think that's been a resounding positive thing, and he's received a positive reception at Old Trafford, which is great. So really good move that from Rangnick, I think, overall. Dalot and Tellers, I think the Dalot and Tellers thing, I know that kind of was floating around with a little bit of Carrick before. I know Ollie's used Dalot or definitely used Tellers. Never not so much Dalot. And I think Carrick might have played the two of them in his little kind of spell. However, what I would say is that clearly Rangnick's favoured them quite highly. He's tried both Wan-Bissaka and Shaw. I think Shaw's more fitness related than it is anything else. I think there is a little bit of a fitness issue with Wan-Bissaka as well, but genuinely think now that Dalot especially, but Tellers is giving Rangnick some headaches with Shaw's position. So I think great. I think that's brilliant, and he likes clearly working with players who just want to get on with it and try hard and play for the shirt, and there's no ulterior motive. It's just come in, big smile on your face, try hard in training, try hard in a match, do what you've been asked to do at your best of your ability, and no doubt the results will come, and you'll get on. And I think that's been positive. Some middle sort of ground, so not so much good, not so much bad, where I think he's had situations, or he's still got a mild situation sort of occurring or players, and that's Rashford. Clearly there's a bit of an issue there with Rashford on a personal level. Is he dealing with that? Maybe he is. He's still sort of, he brought him in, he scored that goal. He did well the game before, come back on, scored a goal. Personally, I think he's an impact player. I've always said that when the holidays, he'd come on and he'd turn the opposition backwards 75, 70 minutes in when they're knackered and he's got 20 minutes to play, and you're bringing on a Rashford who's got an abundance of pace, great option to have in your team, and he's shown again twice now that when he comes off the bench, he's going to create havoc and possibly score a goal. So he's sort of dealing with that pretty well. I could say it's a middle ground there. It's neither good nor bad, but a situation that could fall into one camp. Ronaldo as well. That's a situation that could fall into a camp of good or bad. And I think Rangnick's shown there that when he's tested and he's trusted, that he's okay at managing and managing situations. This is supposed to be one of his strengths. But the problem is too, is sometimes when Rangnick his heart's a little bit on his sleeve, and he's got a tendency to be a little public, I think, with his exchanges and stuff like that, and some of his comments. And obviously Ronaldo was unhappy the other day against Brentford. Rangnick was clearly having a word with him, which seemingly ironed out the situation, and but he's doing it in front of the cameras again. Would Fergie have done that? I think Fergie would have let somebody have that moment and then had a quiet word with him in private. But maybe Rangnick didn't feel like that was necessary. Two grown men, the cameras are always on them. Nobody knew what was said, although he was asked, and I'm sure he didn't tell everybody the full story. But yeah, so that's kind of been in a camp of good and bad, and I think it's been flitting between the two, and I think he dealt with that one pretty well personally, but could that go sour? You never know. Ronaldo's obviously a big personality to manage, and that's something that we've got to look at. And Greenwood for me is kind of teetering on the edge of a situation that could boil over. I think at West Ham there was situations where, last few games, the situation where the kid's been fairly greedy. He's not a wing forward. He's clearly a centre forward. When he's played centre forward at the beginning of the season, he was brilliant. Ronaldo came in. Cavani came back from injury, and he's not playing in a centre forward position. Now that's not Rangnick's fault. I think he was doing that in Ollie's stint. He's continued to do that now. He's continued to do that now in Rangnick's team, and he's an unbelievable talent without a doubt. He's going to be a world class player if he continues playing how he's been playing previously. The kid needs minutes now. You're seeing these kids around the world, the ones that have got something about them are playing games for big clubs. You look at Haaland, you look at Mbappe, you look at Bellingham. These kids aren't just sitting on the bench, coming on, getting 20 minutes or playing out of position. They're playing in the key positions for the team, in their strongest positions because they're trusted with the talent to perform. Greenwood's in that category for me. He's up there. He's 19, coming on 20. He's 20 now. He needs to be playing. You look at Rooney, you look at Ronaldo when they were coming through at that age. Players before them, Giggs, Beckham, Scholes, at United, all trusted to play at that level at that age. And Greenwood's no exception. And at the minute, he's on a bit of a barren, bad patch in terms of his performances, his goal threat, his assisting. I mean, as I say, the other day against West Ham, could have been chin up, looking at Ronaldo, looking at other players on the pitch. And that's difficult for him because he's a centre forward. When he's in those positions, he's been trained to pull the trigger. Something Rangnick needs to work on. That's, again, for me, a middle ground where that could go good or bad. And obviously, he's had his little troubles as Greenwood in terms of the fact that he was in the England team, then he's been dropped out of the England team. He had that issue with Foden. And he's kind of like the kid who's been roped along. I don't think Foden's an angel by any stretch, but obviously he's got a big abundance of talent. And when you compare the sort of level that Foden's at now and the minutes that he's getting at City compared to what Greenwood's getting at United and the success they're getting, the poles apart. So, yeah, I mean, finally, I just wanted to talk about Rangnick and his sort of interaction with the press, really. The good and bad bits. I mean, in terms of just the good bits initially, I'll just go straight into the good bits. I think he speaks well. I think he speaks really well. I think he's tactically very aware of where things go wrong and where things go right. I think during the game, I'm not sure if that's always evident that he is aware of it and that he's dealing with it. Maybe he is. Maybe he just feels that there's no issues to resolve. Albeit in the Villa game, I felt after 30, 40 minutes we ran out of steam and we needed some urgency and something more. We were great in the first 30 in the 2-2 draw against Villa, but it was evident then after that Villa took control. And in those moments there, you're thinking Rangnick's surely aware of this and Rangnick needs to change something. Match is getting overrun. What's going on? What are we going to do? How are we going to change it? So yeah, that I think he's, as I say, in the press, how he deals with the press and the media, he's been good and he's very straight down the line. He's educated. He speaks well. He knows what he's saying. He knows how he's saying it. I think negatives, just for me, a little too honest, coming out saying things, about the team, about the format, things that we need to do is great, and you need to be honest about the tactical side of it. But in terms of player engagement, player interaction, I think there's been occasions where we've spoken a bit about it just recently that he's been a bit too honest, and I think he needs to learn to tell a few porkies and a few lies and bend the truth a little bit and possibly just bat it away. So I think that's something that unfortunately he's not been accustomed to, and I think it's caught him out on a couple of occasions. But I think equally his exchange with the media, because he's a tactician, he is theoretically a godfather of German football. I think he talks like that. He talks like a football man who is thinking about tactics. And sometimes I think when you look at a lot of, I mean, Pep and Klopp are in that category in terms of unbelievable tacticians, unbelievable managers, but they aren't coming to a press conference or talking to the media and then are starting to break down the game in terms of it from a tactical point of view. They're talking about things that will distract you from that and talking about, decisions in the game. They're talking about the generalising the game and they're clever at doing that. And I think Rangnick goes a little bit too deep into the tactical elements of it, with then ridicules certain elements of the team and exposes certain weaknesses. And I think that's a little bit of something that Rangnick could learn to do better. If you ever watched a Fergie press conference, was Fergie coming out to BBC after the game and saying, "Oh yeah, we didn't press high enough, we didn't press enough, we need more intensity and physicality." And he didn't sort of go into those levels of detail and start analysing it like that. And I think that's just where Rangnick's a little weak and inexperienced in terms of his management profile. But I think overall, when I was to summarise it, I think he's definitely turned us around. I think it was definitely turning a big ship around in choppy waters, I think, and he's doing it steadily. And I think we're just gradually getting to that kind of 180 mark where we're halfway turned, and I'm sure there'll be some more ups and downs. And we come back, we have the FA Cup game, we have a fairly winnable game at Burnley to come back to as well, at home at Burnley. So yeah, interesting really. I think overall, like I say, he's done well, and I think it'll come if we come back and the performances are good in the FA Cup and we go through to the next round, and equally we get a good result against Burnley. Things are looking up, but we've got to kick on from here now. They've got to kick on from here if we want to keep on pressing for that top 4 spot. We've got to put pressure on West Ham, Tottenham and Arsenal to slip up. We've got to put pressure on Chelsea to slip up, or we're not in the greatest of form at the minute. And we're a little off it. But yeah, we wait and see. Overall, a 7 out of 10 for Rangnick, if I'm fair. And I think there's hopefully more positive signs to come. So watch his space. Right, guys, it's been a long one, so I appreciate if anybody does watch this back. If you do, drop a comment. I'll comment back. Subscribe and like the video, which helps me out. Catch you in the next one, guys. See you later. Bye-bye.